Welcome in, one and all. Here we are, 3304 Daily, our first ever test live stream. And we got a lot to get into today. Dan Steinbach here, joined by our producer, Ryan Wilkes. The rest of the team today, we are joined by Nels Williams in our co-host chair. We've got Kolbjorn Bergstrom being our segment producer. You will hear from him later. And then our call screener today is Will Locklin. As you can see on the live stream screen, you can text us at 540-216-2231. Also, Will be collecting your text messages and your YouTube responses. So definitely hit up that YouTube chat. All right, we got a lot of football to get into today on our first ever test episode. So let's just get into it. Here we go. All right, well, first of all, I got to call out my man Ryan Wilkes here. To my knowledge from last night, he came out on Twitter and said that he had just started the Harry Potter franchise. And as a big Harry Potter fan myself, I am surprised that such a big franchise has just been able to avoid you, and you have evaded it for so long. Obviously, just not a part of your childhood or whatever. Your parents didn't get you into it. But I am expecting, weekly reports on the movies and what your thoughts are on them. So let me ask you, how far did you get into them last night? Where are you, and what did you think so far?
Well, first off, I don't think it's necessarily that it's avoided me, more that I've avoided it. It never really appealed to me, but I am currently in quarantine, so I figured I might as well start it. I'm midway through the second movie right now. I really, really enjoyed the first one, and from what I've heard and seen, they only get better from that first movie. So I'm looking forward to the rest of it, and I'm hoping I can get through them fairly soon.
Yeah, the first one and actually the first two, they have that same feel. It's the same director. From 3 on, I think that's really when the series gets really, really good. And you'll see that after 3, they really tried to just copy the tone of the movies from there on out. So I expect daily updates, but we'll get into that a little bit more next week on our second test episode. So here we go. We're going to get into a lot of football today. Let's start at the Virginia Tech side of things. Brent Pry has really injected, I think, a lot of new energy into the program. I think there's definitely a lot of excitement going on right now, especially last night. Finally, seeing Brent Pry attack that transfer portal, adding in 2 new quarterbacks to a pretty, vacant quarterback room. A lot of questions going into there to start. But I do want to focus on his hires, and then we can talk about the quarterbacks a little bit. I got this article pulled up here from 247, really going through, all the guys that he has brought in, obviously retaining J.C. Price as an associate head coach, adding in a lot of guys on the defensive staff early, Derek Jones, namely, and then you got Sean Quinn was that second guy. Those were those first 2. Bringing in Chris Marv from Florida State, Stu Holt being in there as their special teams guy. Then you got Brad Glenn. They started to really get after that offensive side of the football. Brad Glenn is the quarterback's coach. And then just most recently, probably the 2 bigger hires, bringing in Michael Hazel from Penn State to be the chief of staff. Obviously, Brent Pry, a lot of ties with Penn State. I think Hazel was at Vanderbilt a little bit too. And then probably what most excites me is adding in Joe Rudolph from Wisconsin. Wisconsin is, as a Big Ten school, they kind of personify that, smash mouth football. We've got a big offensive line. We're going to run the football a lot. It's what Virginia Tech wants to do, but I don't know if they've really had the ability to do that. And I think namely in the offensive line development, area. You look at what they were able to do with Khalil Herbert. I think that's what the program wants to do. They want to have a really good back, but it's really built with that offensive line. And the offensive line, I think, particularly last year, underperformed. So bringing in a guy like Joe Rudolph, who is just a dog at development and recruiting, I'm very excited for that. Nels, I want to welcome you in here. I want to get your thoughts. How are you doing today? And let's just talk some Tech football to start off.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Got a little bit of snow last night, so it's very nice to wake up to that here in Northern Virginia. I'm very excited as well. I feel like Brent Pry, like you mentioned previously, he's injected just this new energy and this new feeling and about the overall thoughts around Tech football. You walk around campus and you ask, how do you feel about Justin Fuente prior to a year or two ago? And not a lot of people had a lot of hope, but now you look at it and you just see that Pry is just trying to bring something new. He's trying to bring something fresh. I think Pry understands that next season is most likely going to be a downturn season. Obviously, with losing Burmeister to the transfer portal and Robinson declaring for the draft, it's not that great of like just an outlook for next season. But for the coaching staff hires that he's made right now, the one thing that I very much noticed is that a lot of these guys have one word mainly around their tagline: recruiting. A lot of these guys are very good recruiting. Chris Marv has recruited some excellent guys down at Florida State, with Ison Orgy, Fernie Orgy, and Ronnie Gruis Jr. Like you mentioned as well, Rudolph came from Madison, Wisconsin. He did a wonderful job recruiting there as well. So I'm very excited for these coaching hires. The one thing that I'm looking out forward to the most is it's speculated that they're going to bring on Tyler Bowen from the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's going to be very interesting when that announcement is made, because it has been kind of locked in since December. But the one thing I'm looking forward to the most has got to be definitely recruiting. It's always been a known secret that Blacksburg has not been a recruiting destination. It's just a mountain town in the middle of nowhere, Virginia, essentially, for saying it straight. So I'm just definitely looking forward to this energy, the recruiting, and just overall what Brain Fry can do for this program.
I like that you brought up Tyler Bowen there. If that ends up being the hire, and again, we don't know. It's not officially official, until the Jaguars finish their season after this weekend. But I mean, you look at his, at his list of stops. He was there at Penn State for a minute, called plays, on an interim level, and then was elevated to co-offensive coordinator. I honestly feel, though, that with Penn State, I feel that a lot of scapegoating can get done there with, seasons not going the way that they want them to, and just, kind of throwing offensive coordinators under the bus. So if he is the hire, I like it. But yeah, no, definitely recruiting is like that's the thing. And that's where you need to elevate in order to get on a more level playing field. We're gonna watch the national championship this week, or even still, you're just gonna watch some of the bowl games. You're gonna watch some of the New Year's Six bowl games. You're gonna watch the Pinstripe Bowl against Maryland. I don't know if that was necessarily a talent deficit, argument, or if Tech was just missing way too many players on the sidelines. But no, recruiting. That's the thing, and that was what Brent Pry's main selling point was when he was hired, and now that he's building up this staff that looks really solid. Recruiting is going to be the big thing. I do want to touch on transfer portal stuff. Obviously, they did a good job, I think, retaining a good number of the players that were in the recruiting class before they had come here. Honestly, losing guys like Ramon Brown and Alex Orgy, two of the bigger names on the offensive side when it comes to recruiting, that could have been expected. But even still, I think that they're doing a good enough job. Honestly, year one on, I think that you're looking at just how is this staff going to develop players? How are they going to recruit young players? And we'll see where they are moving forward. I do want to touch on the two quarterbacks, because I think quarterback was definitely one of the bigger discussions that we were talking about last season. Bringing in two new guys, Jason Brown from South Carolina and Grant Wells from Marshall. I don't know either of these players. I don't watch South Carolina football. I don't watch Marshall football. Did a quick little stat dive last night. Jason Brown, starting out at FCS. I mean, you hear his sound bites. This is a place that he's wanted to be for a long time. So bringing these two guys in for next year honestly, I think that the quarterback conversation is going to be wide open. It could be these two guys. Who knows if Connor Blumrick, is a guy that this staff likes, or even Taj Bullock, which, we saw a little bit of in the Pinstripe Bowl. So the quarterback room definitely has some new guys in there. I think another expectation to have for this upcoming season will be, hey, can the staff just find their guy for the future? I think that's a big part of starting a rebuild at a college program, is getting that quarterback that can start for 3 years. I really think that is important. And I mean, just look back at the previous administration. You're cycling through a new quarterback every year. So I'm really interested in that. I want to get Ryan in on this. I want to see what you have to think here about the whole dynamic going on here with the recruiting, with Brent Pry's staff, with the new quarterback transfers. Ryan, your thoughts?
Well, I want to touch on a couple things here. I think a really important retainee on the staff was Pearson Prelude. You talk about a guy that's had experience with 5 different NFL teams. He played for Virginia Tech. This is exactly the type of guy that you want on Brent Pry's staff, a guy that served as a graduate assistant, but still has a lot to learn about Virginia Tech and what Virginia Tech provides. Now, looking at these 2 quarterbacks, these are 2 guys that, yeah, Jason Brown has a lot of experience. They bring over 70 touchdowns combined to Virginia Tech. So I think these are 2 guys that are really going to duke it out of the quarterback position. But even if Jason Brown does get the nod for the starting position, he only has 1 year. Once he leaves, Grant Wells and Taj Bullock will be duking it out for that starting quarterback position. These are 2 very talented guys. And you watch Jason Brown, you watch some of his tape, and immediately who I thought of when watching Jason Brown was Gerard Evans. Jason Brown is a guy that has a lot of mobility in the pocket. He's a bigger guy. He can move in the pocket, and he's got a really good arm. I think he brings a lot of what Gerard Evans brought to the table when he came to Virginia Tech. Now, I've not gotten to watch much of Grant Wells, but I'm hearing he's a guy that Virginia Tech is very high on. So going into these next few years, I think these 2 quarterback commitments not only set the Hokies up for success this year, but give them like opportunities for success down the road, because Grant Wells has 3 years of eligibility left. You got Taj Bullock right behind him. It creates a very interesting quarterback battle going down the road for the first few years of the Brent Pry era.
No, I like it. And again, talking about down the road, finding a guy for this year and then finding a guy for future years will be really important. I don't know what the fan expectation is, right now. I would love to get the ability to take the temperature of the fan base and kind of get a poll of, how are we feeling? I mean, obviously football season's a long way away. We still have to go through spring. We still have another signing day to go through, although early signing day has kind of ruined the second one in terms of getting new guys in. I don't know where my expectations are quite yet for next season. I think I want to see a little bit more of what the roster looks like, and I would like to see, some spring ball, but I would like to be able to attend spring ball. But honestly, man, I am excited about the future, but next season I think a good benchmark, could potentially be, I think a good benchmark could potentially be, hey, do we want to get to a bowl game? Do we want to get, that 6-6 level in the ACC? We'll see that. So Ryan's telling me to wrap it up here. Ryan, do you want to go to a quick break, or, should we hop into a little bit of basketball talk?
Let's hit a quick break before we hop into basketball.
All right, we'll hit a quick break. On the other side of it, we'll get into a little bit of Virginia Tech men's basketball, talking a little bit about their struggles. They haven't been off to the hottest start, particularly in conference play, that I think a lot of us expected them to. So we're going to be on the other end of it. Hit us up in the YouTube chat, as well as hit us up at that text number, 540-216-2231.
Jake Lyman, Kevin D. Domenico here with you. We welcome you into Castle Coliseum alongside Jake Lyman, Kevin D. Domenico here with you. The 8-1 Cornell Big Red visit the 6-3 Virginia Tech Hokies. Looking for a cutter inside, knocked away by Couture. Bad pass there from Dixon. Couture on the 3-on-3. Finally cutting gets on. Up and under and one. Storm Murphy works it across. High ball screen for Aluma. Murphy's going to fire away and knock it down. Largest lead of the game for Virginia Tech at 16. 14-point lead for Virginia Tech, a commanding one at that. Ojiako high ball screen. Padula wants it, drives inside, finishes off the window with his right, and scores. Post up high side to the left is Aluma. They work it all the way around the perimeter to the far corner to Couture. Now a skip past Padula, left wing, fires away, got it.
Pass, skips it over to Couture left corner, leaves it short, but Mutz follows with both hands and flushes it home. Hassan goes up to grab the board, ahead to Aluma in transition, two-hand slam for Keve Aluma. Got Padula on the line, he comes up short. Mutz offensive board, kick out Aline right wing, nothing but net. Gazan up the left sideline, right wing Aline, pass back Maddox, steps into a three in rhythm and knocks it down. To the short corner on the near side for Ojiako, jab step. He'll retreat back to the near corner, hand off Aline behind the screen. His three tickles the twine. Hokies up by 29, 77-48. Time ticks off the clock, and Virginia Tech bounces back a 93-60 win over Cornell tonight from Castle Coliseum.
All right, we are back here. Going to talk a little bit about Virginia Tech men's basketball. And honestly, we're going to dive into the women a little bit too, because they deserve it. They've been off to a really strong start. All right, here we go. Let's focus on men's basketball for the first. All right, here we go. Let's get back into it. Let's switch it up. Let's go to the basketball side of things. All right, just off the top of the head, this basketball team has not been on the roll that I think a lot of people expected them to before the season. You know, you're looking at a core five that a lot of people were excited about. You're looking at, you know, hopefully some elevation from the bench. And quite frankly, I just don't think that this team has been able to provide what I think a lot of us had expected. I don't know where, you know, the finger gets pointed to the most. Obviously, that massive win over St. Bonaventure kind of just comes as a surprise to us. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe the COVID pause, you know, put a little bit of struggle into them. I mean, essentially, that game on the 4th against NC State, that was their first game played since late December. The 22nd at Duke. So maybe that pause really did throw a wrench in, you know, what they wanted to do. Maybe practices were interrupted. But just overall, a lot of these losses have been close, but they just haven't been able to close out games. I'm not exactly sure, you know, where to go with this. I just know that it's really early on in the season, and the fact that you're already at 6 losses, I mean, that puts you on the bubble. And that, you know, I think Lenardi just came out with one today, and he's saying that they're the last team in. And, you know, unless they just run the table the rest of the way, you know, you throw in another couple losses in there, maybe in a couple more bad stretches. You know, I could really see this team not being a tournament team. You're looking at that UVA game next week on Wednesday. I think that's a big, a tall bar try to set and to see where this team is, because, I mean, frankly, I think that there's a lot of shock at this team's performance so far. Nels, what are you thinking when you're watching these games? I mean, what are you seeing here?
So I do agree that, you know, it has been very close. And I agree as well that they haven't gotten off to the start they wanted to. But I think the biggest thing that they need to work on right now is just their cohesion and chemistry. It feels like every time Storm Murphy checks in or Storm Murphy comes onto the court, it just feels like they don't really have a goal that they want to achieve. Storm Murphy is an excellent player. He's a wonderful player, and I'm very glad that he's on this basketball team. But it just feels like they're yet to get that click, they're yet to get that spark, and they're yet to actually like come together as a team and truly play well. What I noticed the most when I watched them play against Duke is they fought off very well in the first half. It was a very close game in the first half, but in the second half, they just kind of fell apart. They gave up a lot of turnovers. They just weren't hitting anything from 3 or even just down low, and they let Duke run away with it in the end, just based off of foul calls. I can definitely see, though, however, Naheem Alian definitely be benched. He's not really doing too hot right now. He only has 31.9% shooting for field goal range, which is the lowest on the team out of any of the starters. And I definitely do want to see more out of Darius Maddox. Maddox, I've been very, very excited for him ever since he was recruited to come from Virginia Tech. Maddox is a 4-star prospect, 95% on 247 Sports. He looks to be like the next star out of Virginia Tech. But I think that what they need right now is just someone like Maddox to come off the bench and just rejuvenate this offense and rejuvenate this team. They have to get it going now. The ACC is not an easy conference to get to play in. Obviously, you have UNC, Duke, and the likes. And they need to figure this out now before they slip and fall and perhaps miss off in the tournament. Will, how are you feeling about this? How are you feeling about this men's basketball team so far?
Yeah, I completely agree with your Darius Maddox point. Ever since I've been, watching really since the first game of the season against Maine, and he's come off the bench, there's just been very, albeit brief stretches where he's just looked really good, just knocking down shots from 3. And he really just gives you a diverse scoring attack that there's just not too many other guys on the roster that can, even if it's very brief flashes, you see the potential that a guy like Darius Maddox has. So, giving him a bigger role could definitely do something hopefully to rejuvenate Virginia Tech. Because right now the season's definitely on the ropes, and the UVA game is going to be critical, really, for both teams, because UVA and Virginia Tech both were projected to be top 5 in the ACC in the preseason, and they've both been off to slow starts. Virginia Tech at 8-6 on the year, and UVA has been 9-5. So the winner of that game, or really the loser, is looking. It's just a very critical game because both teams have not gotten off to the best start at all. And I think the biggest problem with Virginia Tech is late in games. Dan, as you said, a lot of these losses have been close. The problem with Virginia Tech seems to be usually they just can't. Simply, they just have a hard time putting the ball in the basket at the critical junctures and critical points of games. There'll just be stretches where it's like the last 5 minutes down the stretch, they'll just won't be able to score the basketball. And when defenses are tightening up on them, as defenses tend to put in more effort late in games because that's the winning time for most close games. Virginia Tech really struggles to score the basketball. It's really just as simple as that. They'll just go through 5-6 minute stretches. And saw it against Duke. We've seen it in a few games this year where Virginia Tech will just be like, it'll pop on the screen that they haven't really gotten a field goal in the last 3-4 minutes of the game. So it simply just comes down to shot making, and a lot of guys have just been cold on the roster. And there's ebbs and flows, so there's definitely a good chance that a lot of guys can get their groove back. But at the end of the day, it really just comes down to hitting shots. Another struggle, just to add one more thing, is it seems like defenses, once Virginia Tech, sometimes, especially against the higher ranked teams like against Duke, once Duke kind of figured out what Virginia Tech was doing from like an offensive standpoint, it was kind of over. Like you could kind of just sense that when Virginia Tech goes against teams with like just incredible athletes and like the cream of the crop, they really struggle to, once their set plays have been run, they just struggle to really create any offense for themselves. And we've seen it against them playing against Memphis and against Duke, and just really just the higher level competition in the NCAA overall. But it really just comes down to shot making, and they've been extremely cold as of recently.
Nels, I want to bring up the bench, like you were talking about. Obviously, we want to see some starters, really find their groove and find a niche. But yeah, that bench production going into the season, it was a young unit. There were players from a season ago didn't get much run, but we're looking for some improvements there. It really has been a lot of the Big Five, and you bring up a guy like Darius Maddox who gets some run, but it just doesn't seem like Mike Young is ready to really insert him into a legit sixth-man role, or maybe anyone on that bench for that matter. Ryan, what are your thoughts on rotations and what are we looking at here?
Well, in terms of Naheem Aline, I'll say this. Earlier in the season, Hunter Couture went through a cold stretch where the conversation was about the same. A lot of people were saying, oh, we need to see less of Hunter Couture. He's struggling right now. But Mike Young has been the type of coach that we've seen, especially in this season. He's going to let guys figure it out. He was patient with Hunter Couture, and then Hunter Couture has a game like he does against St. Bonaventure, a game where Tech really put it all together. And that was pretty much the pinnacle of the season so far. I think he's going to do the same thing with Naheem Aline. We know how capable Naheem Aline is. Tech fans have seen that for the past season and a half. They know what he's capable of. So in order to let Naheem work that out, Tech fans are going to have to be patient and let him work it out and just continue to get shots up. That's the only way he's going to get out of this stretch.
Yeah, it's it's just tough. We and especially just as fans, we don't want to be too overly critical, but at the same time, it's like we want them to be successful, and we know that they can. We look at what they were able to do last year, making that tournament run, where they had a really strong season, finished top 3. I know COVID, really messed up their schedule, but even still, they felt like a top 4 team in the ACC last year. And this year, it just seemed like there was a lot of addition. Obviously, you lose a lot of guys in the portal. But now, there are doubts on whether or not this team can really make a deep run. Let's do a quick flip here before we take another break. Gotta talk about the women's basketball team, man. They are just playing lights out. And they're currently on a 4-game winning streak. First 3-0 start in their history in conference. So, men's team 0-3, women's team 3-0. just flip it around. I mean, again, it really is just about the stars on this team, and this team has a lot of them. I mean, I think it starts with Elizabeth Kitley, who has just flat out been one of the best players in the country, and, you know, I don't know a whole lot about the WNBA and, you know, their draft prospects. I know that they don't really have the one and done culture of, you know, college men's basketball, but I mean, I got to look up, you know, WNBA mock drafts, and I'm seeing her name rise up and up as she is just playing outstanding. I mean, Asia Shepherd, Georgia Moore, Kiana Traylor, everyone is just playing so well, and they're just, it's not even that, you know, they're playing up to the competition. Like, they look like the top of the ACC, especially with the final scores against, you know, teams like Florida State, especially Duke, just beating a top 15 team at home by 22 points, and then taking down Wake. They did just have a game postponed against UVA, but then they go to Chapel Hill on Sunday. You're looking at a game, a rematch against Duke on Thursday next week. And then, of course, you got the Giants like NC State and Louisville down the road. But, I mean, this team looks like they're firing on all cylinders right now. And, you know, Kenny Brooks has himself a good squad. And it looks like this team, I'm going to pull up a women's bracket, Nels, while you're talking, because I just want to see how, you know, nationally this team is viewed. Because this team is really good. They've got a lot of star players.
Yeah, I definitely think that ever since their 2-game losing streak against Tennessee, where they lost, Tennessee was ranked number 11 at the time. They lost 64-58, and then they were absolutely blown out by Liberty, 59-40. It feels as if though there was something internally within this team that just kind of clicked, and they really did turn it around. And as you mentioned before, Elizabeth Kitley has been playing lights out. She's been playing like an absolute star on this team. She's been producing almost every single role. Georgia Amore and Shepherd have also been doing a fantastic job. So it's going to be very, very interesting what they can do down the stretch. They've looked like just like an absolute all well-rounded team. I don't think anybody really expected this so far. Like coming into the season, I think more the focus was on men's basketball, which also could have lit a fire under the women's basketball team, because they could have looked at themselves and said, hey, we have almost no expectations right now. Not as many people have their eyes on us. Let's go out and do what we can. And they have been producing on all levels, and it's an absolutely amazing game to watch. I think everyone right now in Blacksburg should know the name Elizabeth Kitley. She has turned around this women's basketball program into a top contender in the ACC, and beating Duke 77-55 and beating Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, I think just even nails it down the head even more that the women's basketball program is legit and should be feared by and respected by ACC opponents. I definitely do, I'm looking forward and very interested to see what Kitley can do down the stretch and see whether or not she can keep up this production. But if she stays hot, if Shepherd stays hot, and if Amore stays hot, this team can make a run in the NCAA tournament come March and April. I'm willing to say that.
All right, we're going to throw to a break real quick. And on the other end of that break, we're going to get some NFL discussion. Or no, some college football discussion. We're going to bring in Kolbjorn Bergstrom, who's going to be letting us in on all the details about the national championship game this upcoming Monday, right? I think it's Monday night. So we're going to have a break real quick, and we'll see you guys on the other side of it.
Hello and welcome into the Joel in Winston-Salem, North Carolina for an ACC clash between the Demon Deacons of Wake Forest and the visiting Hokies of Virginia Tech. Bring around the Rosie to Kiana Traylor, who goes baseline, now into the paint, gets an open layup and draws first blood. Hokies on top 2-0, 1:30 into this contest. Crossing the timeline to the top of the key, attacks the paint, gets a layup line of a layup to go, and it's 12-5. Rear direct X traffic like an air traffic controller. Gets a high ball screen from Samuel. Used it, but backed out to the three-point line. Pulls the trigger and almost airballed it right into that breadbasket of Kitley. Amore pushes the pace, has speed, kicks out the trailer in transition. Another transition three for the Hokies. Makes it 27-19. Amore with another easy dish in transition. Into the top of the key, Spear. This is the play all along. Spear, step back three, over trailer, it's money. Lands on her backside, and that will be the end of the first half. Hokies on top, 35-26. They led by 12 until a late three by Spear.
Dishes it back out to Becker, now fakes, drives in the lane, pumps, puts it up, no, rebound the Deeks, yes! Olivia Samuel puts it in for Wake Forest, and they strike first here in the second half. Elise Williams back up the floor for the Demon Deacons, then Shepard takes it away. End over end, back down the floor. Shepard off the glass and in. Asia Shepard for 2. Add 2 points on the scoreboard. Hokies lead by 13. Resets and goes back into the paint. She puts it up for 2, and that one will go. Pretty move by Georgia Amor. Hokies now up by 13. 10 seconds on the shot clock. Asia Shepard now drives down low, puts it up for 2, and in. Asia Shepard, a pretty move there by the grad student. Down low in the paint. She has it stolen away by the Demon Deacons. 1:15 remaining. Down the floor goes Nia Becker. One-on-one with Asia Shepard. She turns, gives it off to Olivia Sumial, who puts it up for 2 and in. Deeks are within 9, 1:06 remaining. Staying so long from Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Virginia Tech wins it 66-53 over Wake Forest.
All right, welcome back. You guys just heard Nick Brown and Carter Hill on their call from the Virginia Tech women's basketball game in their win over Wake Forest. And this is what it's all about to me. Really want to make sure that we're highlighting our broadcasters here while we're doing our little thing on the YouTube channel and hopefully on live air one day. So here we go. Big football day today, as we have been talking about a lot. And, of course, got a pretty good game in college coming up. Georgia versus Alabama, all SEC championship game for the Natty. College football playoff semifinals on New Year's Eve. All right, we're going to welcome in Kolbjorn Bergstrom here. He's got the segment. Kolbjorn, let it ride. Let's go.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the national championship, and it is the game to be expected to be Georgia. Both teams dominating Michigan and Cincinnati over this past semifinal weekend. So I want to start this segment off here quickly. Looking here at a little bit of history for Nick Saban and looking at his big game experience here. And is it going to be a benefit when playing against Georgia, as he has reached 5 national championships with Bama, winning 3 of them, as Georgia has only reached 1 national championship during the playoffs, during their time in the playoffs, and they lost that to Alabama.
You're asking me if this is a benefit, Nick Saban's championship experience?
Yeah, is it going to be a massive benefit for like the young team?
I mean, absolutely. No, Saban has been just impossibly good. The Alabama dynasty is something that we will probably not see again for a long time, or at the very least, it's very hard to emulate. No, he's built a monster, without a doubt. Nels, what are your thoughts?
Nick Saban is a man who not many coaches and players will admit it, but he's a man that strikes fear and intimidates his opponents. This was supposed to be the year that Alabama, in quotes, was supposed to have a down year, quote unquote. Yet they come out and they make the national championship again. They lost Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith. They lost so many people in the last draft that produced and made them the title contender that they were last year. Coming into this year, not a lot of people thought Bryce Young was going to be that great of a quarterback. He's surpassed all the expectations. Their O-line has been a little bit shaky to the Crimson Tide expectations. And yet, once again, they make the national championship. So I think the biggest thing that Alabama has for this game is just the fact that Nick Saban is a man to be feared. On the other side of the ball, with the Georgia Bulldogs, Georgia is just trying to get the monkey off their back that is the Crimson Tide. They haven't beat Alabama in a long time. And Nick Saban, as we all know, is so good against his former assistants. And Kirby Smart is just trying, and I think he really wants to be obviously Nick Saban, but he just wants to prove that it can be done. It's going to be a very, very good game. I don't think that Georgia is going to necessarily win, mainly because Nick Saban just leads just Alabama into a different football program than any other whenever it comes to these games, as long as the fact that Nick Saban has his championship experience, as Kolbjorn mentioned previously. But it just goes to show of how great of a coach Nick Saban is when he can lead the Crimson Tide to the national championship again in a quote unquote down year that everyone had predicted them to be. So I think it's going to be a very, very good game. It all depends on whether or not Stetson Bennett shows out for Georgia and whether or not they don't play behind necessarily, because if you never want to play behind against the Crimson Tide, but if they can get their offense rolling with Alabama and Bryce Young stays elite, then I think this is Crimson Tide by 10 easily. What are your thoughts, Kolbjorn?
I mean, I was gonna even move us into a question after this, but no, I mean, specifically with the big game experience, not only with the, I didn't even list like the SEC championship games that Saban's been able to be involved in, but specifically, his only being out of the college football playoffs like once and being able to really in all those other years make the national championship and have currently it would be above a 500 record in it with a 3-2 record. That's very impressive. That's ultimately uncalled for, not in a bad way, but just more for the fact of I mean, even Dan kind of touched on, it's just not something that you would really expect. And yeah, it's definitely going to be hard. I'll even touch up on UGA's history versus Bama as we wrap this, but it's going to be Saban's big game experience here is definitely going to help for a lot of these guys, particularly as they're going to be missing like a big name like John Mechie, who, if I remember right, was a huge factor in their win against Georgia. I think particularly without him, it's going to be a lot as you're going to be looking towards Jameson Williams and Brian Robinson. Moving past that, though,
let's get Ryan in on this a little bit. He's got something to say.
I just want to touch on Nels. I want to push back on the fact that you think that Alabama was maybe doubted a little bit coming in this year. I would say, this is right on par with expectations. They started out number 1 in the AP preseason top 25. Bryce Young was signing NIL deals back in July. So obviously some people thought he was going to be what he has become to be, and he's really been that guy for Alabama. I mean, he tore up this Georgia secondary the last time they played, and I think that's a main concern. If you're Georgia going in this game, can your defensive line get to Bryce Young enough in order to make him feel uncomfortable and to force some bad throws? Because last time he was very, very comfortable in that pocket. The Alabama offensive line gave him plenty of time to throw, and he torched Georgia secondary. So maybe that's become more of a focus in the past few weeks, is focusing more on this secondary, because that front seven is really dangerous. And if they can get to Bryce Young, I think it creates a very different football game than what we saw in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's absolutely right. You've been able to see that type of stuff for Bama against even LSU, and of course their loss against Texas A&M as well. So if that basically a full NFL prospect front seven from Georgia can really get pressure in this game, that'll definitely help. I did, though, as we were moving into the next question, really take a look here at Georgia, as I feel like it's kind of a consensus that Georgia's going to need to do a good bit here to pull off this game. What does Georgia need to do to ensure that Bama doesn't have the same offensive success that they had in the SEC title game? As, I mean, we even mentioned that front seven and secondary, of course, will be huge, particularly that front seven.
All right, well, this is weird because I need to I might need to take a step back here. I don't know how this is happening, but I'm looking at the game right now on ESPN. ESPN's FPI has Georgia favored, and then currently the line is favored in Georgia. Georgia's favored by 2.5 right now. I don't understand how this is possible. I mean, after we just saw what Alabama did to them, I don't know, maybe the month off is a difference, but if you're talking about what Georgia needs to do, get better in the secondary, get pressure on Bryce Young. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I don't think they're going to have nearly as much running success Alabama will against Cincinnati, obviously. I mean, I think that Jordan Davis is like 2 Cincinnati front seven players put together. I honestly think that that's who he is. But no, I think Bryce Young will just be able to sit back and do what he did to them again. I really don't see a scenario where Georgia comes out on top of this game. Honestly, they can play him better, I guess, but I think Alabama just has the horses to just run it up again on them.
Dan, I want to push back on that. I think Georgia comes out on top. I really do. I think this is a team that's going to make adjustments. I think it was a kind of warning sign to the rest of the country when they took down Michigan in dominating fashion that, they're ready for this rematch. And I think people that don't want to see this rematch, I'd say, why not? Why wouldn't you want to see this rematch? It's 2 of the best teams in the country. It's the 2 best teams in the country, definitely. So I think this is going to be a great game. I think Georgia is going to have success up front. Brian Robinson obviously had a great game against Cincinnati, and I think this Georgia defensive line is a whole different animal where he's not going to be able to find those holes that he found against Cincinnati. I don't think Bryce Young's going to be all that comfortable. I know they had their way last time, but I think Kirby Smart's the type of guy to not let that happen again, and I think he's going to make the necessary adjustments to make this a game, and I think at the end of the day, Georgia will come out on top.
Man, I just don't know about that. Man, Nels, I want to get you on this too, because I mean, you're my co-host here. Like, do you see a scenario where Georgia wins? I can't, especially with just the difference at quarterback. I mean, yeah, I get it. Stetson Bennett looked really good against Michigan, but I would argue that Alabama's defense is really much better than Michigan's. I know that they were able to limit Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo and whatever, they did all that, but I really think that Alabama is just a different beast. And Michigan's defense, it's been shown during the season, you can run on them. Like, they have a weakness. I don't know if Alabama necessarily has that weakness, but also I know that, they lost to Texas A&M. I want to get your thoughts and feelings on here.
The only scenario that I can see the Bulldogs coming out on top is if they truly do stop Brian Robinson with their front seven. Georgia's secondary is obviously the weaker side of their defense. Their front seven is spearheaded by Jordan Davis. But Brian Robinson absolutely torched Cincinnati defense. All Alabama essentially did was run the ball. Yes, they did have a couple passing plays and passing touchdowns as well. But if they can stop and they can contain Brian Robinson, then I can see Georgia coming out on top in this one. Also as well, I can see Stetson Bennett. I know that there's been the storyline behind whether or not Kirby Smart is going to choose Bennett or Daniels. What side is he going to choose? If Bennett keeps up the production that he had against Michigan and against the Wolverines in the Orange Bowl, then I think that they can keep it close and perhaps win this game. But it's going to come down to the wire, as why ESPN put the line at 2.5. But I only think that people in the mainstream media as well as Vegas is supporting Georgia is because that they absolutely walloped Michigan, and Alabama looked a little bit shaky against Cincinnati. If Cincinnati did play a little bit better on the offensive side of the ball, then that game would have been a lot closer. And I think that just looking at the game and looking at that score line from Michigan versus Georgia and Alabama versus Cincinnati, then that's the only reason why people think Georgia's favored. But this game is going to come down to the wire, and I can honestly see this going to either team.
All right, Kolbjorn, let's try to squeeze one more in here. Keep it tight, and so we can keep it tight.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and squeeze this in here before we have a little bit of a who's who here for who we think's going to win. Obviously, Stetson Bennett struggled in the game last time, and you guys have even touched up on that. Well, if you even have an opinion here whether you think he'll be able to be more successful or not, you can add that in. But I specifically here want to focus on the ground game, as James Cook and Zamir White had an incredible game against Michigan. They're two incredible running backs, most likely going to be having some sort of role on NFL teams here in the future. So will Georgia look to unleash them as they did against Michigan, as they ultimately weren't able to do against Bama in the SEC game, where if you look at Bama against Cincinnati, they had Jerome Ford have 15 carries for 77 yards, pretty decent to be able to give Cincinnati some sort of offensive work where they really didn't have any.
All right, well, we're pretty up against it. Just flat out, I don't think that they're going to be able to run it on Alabama like they did on Michigan. And do we want to just kind of skip ahead a little bit so we can stay a little bit more timely here? Go around the room, who we think is going to win. I think Bama wins easily. I think they easily cover. I think this is I can't see a world where Kirby Smart outcoaches Nick Saban in this game.
I'm riding with the dogs. I'm taking Georgia. I mean, just their dominating performance against Michigan, and they want revenge, and I think they're going to take it.
You know what they say? They say good teams win, great teams cover. And for that reason alone, I'm going to have to take Georgia by 2. I'm going to say 30-28. Absolutely, they're going to cover that, and they're going to finally usurp the Crimson Tide.
Well, this is definitely a hard matchup. Here's what I'm going to say. Nick Saban's 1-24 against his former assistants for a reason, only losing to Texas, losing to his former assistant from Texas A&M this year. I'm going to go ahead and have to go with Alabama. I think they have enough threats in the receiving game, and I think that it's just too big of a gap how they were able to dominate Georgia in the SEC championship to have to make up within a month when playing again.
Yeah, Georgia's going to play a lot better in this game. And I think this game is going to end up being very close, very tightly contested in the fourth quarter. But at the end of the day, I think the better quarterback will lead his team to the victory. And I think Bryce Young, a lot of people say maybe he didn't deserve the Heisman, but at the end of the day, he did win the Heisman Trophy award because he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So I think Bryce Young is going to get it done and I'm going to pick Alabama to win by a field goal.
Will, I'm really glad you were able to get your thoughts in on there, and I'm really glad you're on the right side of things here. All right, we're going to hop in, take a quick break, and on the other side of that, Ryan will wrap us out with a little NFL final week of the season preview. We'll talk about a little bit of playoff scenario, and then we'll wrap up for the day. All right, here we go. 3304 Sports Daily, everyone.
Football on the diamond today from Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. It's the New Era Pinstripe Bowl as Virginia Tech faces Maryland from New York. Catch it at his own 10, has space right up the middle of the field. Now will weave back to the right side, has blockers in front, across midfield, 40, 35, 30, and he will go down the right sideline and into the end zone. Maryland takes an early lead, a 95-yard punt return touchdown. 92-yard punt return. Here's a fake. Moore gets the snap up the left side. He's got the first down and falls out of bounds as the Hokies with some trickery in the Pinstripe Bowl. Two receivers in the set. Blackshear comes in motion from the slot. Blumrick going to throw deep down the right sideline for Payute. He's got it at the 30-yard line and falls down inside the 25. Fakes the handoff. Tagovailoa looks down the sideline. He's got a wide open receiver. A one-handed grab from Cobbs, and he's twirled down inside the 5. What a play from Brian Cobbs.
Tagovailoa takes a snap, back to pass, has time. Now pressure, throws, little screen pass. Busted up by the Hokies. It was Shamari Connor leading the charge. Back to pass, has time. He looks, has all day, extends the play. Now steps up, fires. A wide open man to the left side of the field. Breaking a tackle into the end zone. To the left side, it's Darrell Jones. To the corner he goes, and into the end zone he goes. The give is to Hempley. The hole is there. Plunging forward into the end zone. Touchdown, Maryland. 41-10 is your score. And the nail may have just been put in the coffin. Maryland takes the 2021 Pinstripe Bowl. Your final score, the Terrapins 54 and the Hokies 10.
All right, here we go. Final segment of the day. Let's wrap it up. You just heard Jake Lyman and Kevin DiDomenico from the Pinstripe Bowl on the call live. Very impressive to see them out there. All right, here we go. Just a little bit of fun here to end the day talking about NFL Week 18. A lot of teams already in the playoffs, but there are still some holes left in the tournament. Ryan Wilkes is going to run us through them.
Yeah, the AFC is a big division in which needs to be figured out. The first scenario, the Titans clinch the 1 seed with a win. Kolbjorn, I want to get your thoughts on the Titans.
Yeah, being a little bit of an AFC, a little bit of the AFC South guy myself. Here's what I can say on that. The Titans playing the Texans this week is going to be a bit of a concern because last time they played the Texans, they did lose to them.
Yeah, and the next scenario, obviously the Kansas City Chiefs can clinch the number 1 seed with a win against Denver and that Tennessee loss versus Houston. So they had a chance to win the division last week with a win over the Bengals, but they could not get it done. And the next scenario I want to talk about, the Buffalo Bills can clinch a division with a win over the New York Jets, and more likely than not, they will get that done. But I want to get your guys' opinions on whether or not the Bills have been impressive, unimpressive, but what they have done for you guys, because for me, this is a team that has both a stellar offense and a stellar defense, and it's later than I expected for them to be clinching their division.
No, yeah, Ryan, you're right. Buffalo has been very up and down. I do hold the belief that when they're on, they are probably the best team in football. Their offense, when it's hot, and when Josh Allen's just throwing the ball all over the field, it can be really good. And they had a semblance of a running game, especially the last couple weeks. Devin Singletary, 86 yards. You see that against Carolina. You see him with 110 against Atlanta. Big game for him. If they can get some semblance of a ground game, to complement Allen through the air, which when it's on, it's lethal. And that defense can be really, really good. No, man, it's definitely later than I would have wanted for them to clinch the division. New England has been a surprise this year with the play of Mac Jones, but no, I think that they are impressive when they're on. It's just, can they stay on, for the postseason?
Moving forward, the Patriots can clinch with the AFC East with a win and a Buffalo loss. Moving forward to the Colts, they clinched a playoff spot with a win over Jacksonville. Kind of an up and down season for the Colts so far this year. Nels, what are your thoughts on the Colts and their season?
As you mentioned, it's been very up and down. But one word I'm going to say is it's been rocky. Jonathan Taylor, as of late, has been booming. But that's mainly what they've been relying on. Carson Wentz is just kind of been unreliable for them. I know that that's what Indianapolis wanted. They wanted Carson to come in and turn himself around and fix himself from his past seasons with the Eagles, but I don't think he's really been that kind of guy that they really need. And maybe he can get 1 or 2 more years in Indianapolis to prove it. But sometimes he'll show out and you look like his former self in Philadelphia when he absolutely lit it up and he was scrambling like Josh Allen. Sometimes he'll come out and he look like he can't throw the ball more than 10 yards like Ben Roethlisberger has. So I think if Indianapolis relies on the running game and relies on their offensive line like Jonathan Taylor, then they can get it going. But if not, I can't really see the Colts doing that well. They've been a very interesting team to watch so far.
Kolbjorn, I know you got some thoughts on the Colts.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a Colts guy myself. Like, here's what I can say about this. Jonathan Taylor has been destructive against Jacksonville over the past couple times that they've played them. And you might be a little bit concerned with this team based off their loss against Las Vegas, but do keep in mind that they had 8 starters returning with COVID. And most of the time when people were returning with COVID this year, they were relatively unproductive. Carson Wentz was one of them, and he had his worst game of the season then. So I expect the team to bounce back against the team whose fans are going to be coming up to wearing clown outfits to the game.
So I think this next game is going to be the one that a lot of people are keeping their eyes on. Raiders and Chargers, winner gets a bid in the playoffs. This is a matchup. Obviously, the Raiders have had one of the craziest seasons in maybe NFL history, just off the field perspective as well. It's been very up and down for them. And the Chargers, I think the Chargers are a team, if they get in, they're a team to watch out for. They're a team that can really make it run. I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on both of these teams here.
Well, Ryan, what I find funny is that if Indianapolis loses, they can just both take knees and tie and get into the playoffs together. That obviously won't happen. Honestly, of the two teams, I am surprised to see the Raiders here. They have definitely overcome a lot of adversity in the postseason, in the regular season, to get to this point. So seeing them on the last week of the season with a shot at the playoffs, with a legit shot at the playoffs, just winning, you're in. I think the Chargers take this one. I think that they definitely are the higher ceiling team, and you look at what Justin Herbert has been able to do in year 2. It's been very impressive, but also Derek Carr, I mean, he's been playing very well himself. So, no, I mean, this is what I think the NFL wants. They want to flex this game and, get that, winner take all, last spot of the playoffs. It's going to come down to the final whistle. So, I am excited for this matchup. I do think the Chargers coming on top here.
Couple teams that have a low chance of making it but can still get in is both the Ravens and the Steelers, who face off this weekend as well. And going on the NFC, most of the NFC is pretty much settled, but there's still a couple scenarios up in the air. The Cardinals, sitting at 11-5, can clinch the NFC West with a win against Seattle and a Rams loss versus San Francisco. The Cardinals are a team to watch out for, obviously, in the playoffs. They've really put it to a lot of teams, including Dan and I's Cowboys over the previous weekend. That was a tough one to swallow. But are the Cardinals really a contending team going into the postseason?
I mean, obviously. I mean, you got a guy like Kyler Murray who can just run around and frustrate your defense. I don't necessarily think they need to get healthier on the offensive side with him, but I mean, getting receivers back could help. Rondell Moore was out with COVID. James Conner was out with COVID. So getting them back into the fold definitely makes them dangerous. But no, one of the 2 NFC West teams is going to be that 5 seed. Going to play Dallas most likely as a 4 seed. So there are definitely scenarios where Arizona can make a solid run. I mean, we just saw what he was able to do against Dallas in AT&T Stadium. He's undefeated there, as they did not fail to mention it at all during the broadcast. So, no, Arizona is without a doubt a very dangerous team. Both NFC West teams are.
So the Saints, another team that have had kind of an up and down season, obviously losing their starting quarterback, Jameis Winston, definitely didn't help their chances, but they can clinch a playoff berth with a win versus Atlanta and a San Francisco loss. Nels, tell me a little bit about the Saints and what you think they can bring to the table if they get to the playoffs.
Well, as you mentioned, losing Jameis Winston was huge. Jameis Winston was having an absolute turnaround year, and I think that if he continued to play and didn't get injured, he could have won Comeback Player of the Year Now, obviously, that isn't going to happen, and I think it's going to go to Dak instead. But for the Saints to come out and for the Saints to make the playoffs, they need to have their offense just on firing on all cylinders. It hasn't been doing much, mainly because of the quarterback carousel that's been going on down there with Taysom Hill and Ian Book. But if Hill and Kamara come out and they absolutely just run over the 49ers, then I think that the Saints can make it in, but they're not going to go far. Sean Payton has absolutely willed this team into the playoffs, but come playoff time, I don't think they're anything more than just a first round exit. This team can only do so much behind Kamara and whoever starts a quarterback, because it seems like it's a new one almost every day. Obviously, it's pretty bad when you're calling up Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers to come back for you. So I don't think that the Saints should even be in the playoff spot right now, but unfortunately, that's how wide open the NFC is right now.
So the 49ers, they can clinch a berth with a win over the Rams or New Orleans loss. They're 7-2 in their last 9. Kolbjorn, is this a team that can really, make a push in the playoffs given their hot streak recently?
Surprisingly, though, I do agree with Nels with the Saints. I actually have the opposite end here with San Francisco. This is a team that, keep in mind, just a couple of years ago was able to push to the Super Bowl and play Kansas City, and Patrick Mahomes is a Super Bowl win, though they actually did relatively well in the game after letting it up. Jimmy Garoppolo has definitely been a lot better down the second half of the stretch for San Francisco. And this is a matchup, though, where you normally wouldn't think it's ideal. It might actually be ideal here for the 49ers in the last week to clinch up, as I think it was just the start of that streak, or at least around the start of it, where they beat the Los Angeles Rams at home 31-10. So with a very powerful and strong rotational running game, a guy like Deebo Samuel, though, who he's not going to get the MVP, has certainly been one of the best players in the NFL this year. And even Trey Lance having a good game against Houston last week, but most likely Jimmy Garoppolo if he's healthy. This is a team that could do something and be a little bit dangerous, particularly if they're going to be coming up against, you're looking at whether it's Tampa or Dallas or LA or even Arizona. Like it's going to be very interesting to see what this team can do. They'll definitely make a lot more noise, I believe, than the Saints could.
So it looks like we got about 3 minutes left, but let's do a little rapid fire. Super Bowl favorite heading in the postseason. Kolbjorn, you go first.
I had some things follow me there. My Super Bowl favorite, it's kind of hard. I had a weird scenario when I was thinking about it a week ago. I think my current Super Bowl favorite is probably, you know what? No, I'm going to go ahead and be bold. I was going to say the Packers, but I'm going to say the Bengals are my current favorite.
I love it. I think Nels was talking about, Joe Burrow not winning Complete Player of the Year. I think it is him at this point. It's got to be. I would love to see the Bengals make a deep run. I am gonna go Packers. They're getting healthier. The only other team I would love to see how Tennessee integrates Derrick Henry back into their offense. He is designated to return, so he will be back for the playoffs. He's going to have the bye week, assuming they can get this win this weekend against Houston. But no, yeah, I think Green Bay right now would be my favorite.
I gotta go Chiefs. I think starting off the season they started off pretty rough, but they rattled off 9 straight. So this is a team obviously that you can't get away with doubting. If you doubt them, they're just going to punch right back, and they've proven that they can do that. They've probably the most dynamic offense in the NFL. So I think that's definitely a team that's going to make a run and probably win the Super Bowl for me.
I'm a little bit biased in saying this, but I got to go with my Green Bay Packers. I'm expecting it's going to be a Packers-Chiefs Super Bowl. The media is going to label this as the State Farm Bowl, and we're never going to hear the end of it. And there's going to be a multitude of commercials that come out from it. But this is Green Bay's year, and I think everybody in Green Bay understands that. Aaron Rodgers needs to get this ring if he wants to stay in Green Bay, and the Packers front office understands that as well. Devontae Adams coming up in the offseason with his contract up. It's got to be Green Bay. This is the year, and I think everyone understands in Wisconsin that this is the year for them to do it, and they will.
I also have the Packers as the favorite. I would say the Packers and the Chiefs, respectively, and like the AFC and NFC are the two favorites, just because they have the two best quarterbacks in the league in Mahomes and Rodgers, and just dynamic offenses, and their defenses to me are good enough. So they have to be the favorites, but I like the Bengals pick though. The Bengals could definitely make a sleeper run to the Super Bowl.
All right, Ryan, is that all we have for the NFL? All right, there you go. And I think that's going to do it for us. We are pushing up against it here. So I want to thank you guys for listening to our first test stream. We will see you right back here next Friday. Take care, everyone.